Hi, Darren. Thanks for joining me today.
No problem. My pleasure.
And well, the elephant in the room in the country, I guess. So, how's lockdown been treating you these days?
Made the most of it. I've enjoyed the sunny weather. It seems to have changed over the last couple of days, but I've been going on nice long bike rides. So I've been pushing myself further and further and regretting it more and more when I get home and my muscles are punishing me for being so foolish.
Well, that's good. Well, you're getting some good exercise then anyway. I go for my regular walks, but my knees don't allow too much more yet. I should get the bike out, though.
I used to go jogging, but my knees don't take it anymore. They don't like it.
The joys of middle age.
Thanks. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you consider yourself middle-aged yet?
Well, I try not to act my age, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's something different, isn't it? That's part of the joys of getting older. You can act younger.
Yeah, you can
People
get away with a lot more that you couldn't when you were a child or a teenager.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we'll just start on with your writing and your books. So I have heard you speak before, and amazing. And I think you said your writing journey essentially began with some humorous letters.
Yes, I used to work at a company that sold tools, and one of the suppliers was based in North Carolina, and he used to come over and force me to go out for meals with him on his expense account, and it's rude not to. And one time I heard he was going to come to Britain and go up to Newcastle. So I sent him a joke letter saying some of the do's and don'ts, but fortunately he took it as a joke and he didn't do anything that would have got him beaten up or anything like that. And then eventually I sort of sent the joke letter to someone else in America, and they found it funny. So they said, why don't you get in touch with such and such, who was their friend who ran an arts website, which is called the Southern Gothic Creations. And I got in touch with him, and eventually he read it. It took a bit of cajoling, and he read it and he enjoyed it. And he said, right, can you write some articles for me? So I ended up once a week writing a mixture of comedy articles or serious ones. So I'll be one week writing about Monty Python or the Sex Pistols, and the next week I'll be writing about Rosa Parks or the Finding Mike thing in London, where someone tried to jump off the bridge and he found the person that rescued him, and self-harm and all these dark subjects, and it was very popular. So I ended up writing poetry, so there'd be one or two poems a week published there as well. But eventually I was writing for a couple of years, and then it wasn't my fault that the website closed, because it wasn't really making a living out of it, unfortunately. And so I was left with the muse sitting on my shoulder going, right, but I didn't have an outlet for it. So I thought, well, let's write a novel. And I tried writing a thriller, but it just didn't work. And a friend of mine who lives in Germany, she's an Italian, she said to me, well, some of your articles you wrote were really funny. Why don't you write a comedy? And it was a light bulb moment. And I thought, well, I love Terry Pratchett, I love Douglas Adams, I love Tom Sharp, all the sort of great comedy writers, modern comedy writers anyway. And I thought, no, let's write a comedy. So I thought, right, what works? And I thought, right, let's go for something that I can create one story and write lots of sequels, a bit like Terry Pratchett and his Discworld novel. So I thought I'd write about angels and demons based in heaven and hell, and they come to earth and cause mischief.
Was there any reason why you picked angels and demons, or is it just one on each shoulder started yapping at you again?
one demon and an even bigger demon.
And no, like, stop fighting. Okay, I'm writing you down.
No, I thought, because I've always been interested in mythology and comparative religions, I thought, well, there's lots of scope to take mythical creatures or characters from the Bible, different saints, and put them in the story, and I can develop the characters in my own way, and I can just make up demons to do whatever I want as well. So I sort of wrote that story, and while I was trying to find an agent, I wrote 4 more sequels or in the series, and I kept going back to the first one and sort of putting little Easter eggs in there that referred to the subsequent next ones in the series. So, and then eventually I found a publisher for my first book, Closing Shop, and it did well, and it got through to the finals of the People's Book Prize. And then the following year, my second book, The Sword of Uncreation, was published, and I'm through to the finals again, but the award ceremony just got postponed this year, so I've no idea when that's going to happen, but fingers crossed I'll win it this time.
Yeah, so I want to just go back, as you're racing ahead of me. I got all these questions and stuff, so that's no problem. But Closing Shop, then, your first book, I guess you could describe it sort of as the devil gets tired of living in hell, wants to move back to heaven, decides to call up God for a parlay, and they meet at a Hawaiian hotel.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
The Indians don't like this, so they all...
neither side particularly wants peace for their own particular reasons. So they bring armies down to make sure that the other side don't misbehave, because there's complete lack of trust. And then Satan sneaks down his own secret weapon, Maurice, who's the most insane demon in hell, and he sort of keeps him in a steamer trunk. But the angel, some suspicious angels, steal the trunk and hide it, and then the reporter sneaks into the hotel and accidentally opens the trunk, and figuratively speaking, all hell breaks loose. And so it's sort of, to add to all the troubles, both armies end up encamped in the same nature reserve together, and they get too friendly and fraternize, and they all get drunk. But then they have to separate and pick up arms and almost go to war. So it's almost the next apocalypse.
So initially, it almost sounds like humans are the real evil in this one, having unleashed the ultimate weapon, essentially.
But he does it by accident. He doesn't know what's in the steamer trunk. He's just looking for a good story.
Right.
So he opens,
even worse, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, curiosity.
Very human, though, yes.
So he opens up the wrong kind of Pandora's box, the opposite. So it's got all the evils in there, and what's left is no hope. And so he unleashes it, and that won't spoil what happens in the story once it gets loose.
Right. So the hotel in Hawaii. Well, why did you pick Hawaii? You just felt like that sounds like a cool place to have a meeting?
Yeah, I was trying to think of, right, where would they have a peace talk where it's out of the way? And obviously, Hawaii is in the middle of the Pacific, so you can't really get much more out of the way. So if things did go wrong, the islands might disappear into the oceans, but that's it. And I've got some friends who actually live in Hawaii, and they were able to give me advice and tell me about certain places. But when I was doing my research, I found out about this nature reserve, and I said to my friends in Hawaii, "Oh, what's it like there?" And they didn't even know it existed. So I was actually telling them about places on the island that they didn't know about.
So you did I think you said at one point you phoned up the hotel or phoned someone in Hawaii? Other than
the hotel is actually, I've changed the name because it's Turtle Bay Hotel, which is a really big posh hotel in the north end of the island. But I changed it to Terrapin Cove so they don't sue me, because obviously changing the name, they'll never recognise it at all. But I did actually get in touch with the Honolulu Police Department to ask them about what kind of weapons they carry, and find out little snippets, like a lot of their police cars that they drive around the island in are actually unmarked. So it's, even though they're in uniform, the actual police cars are just unrecognisable. So I go for little snippets of information that are actually factual that people may not know, but I put it in there just to add a little bit of accuracy to the silliness.
Yeah, you want to add some realism in your unrealistic story.
Well, I mean, it's got to have certain elements of reality in there, otherwise it's just nobody's going to enjoy it as much.
All right, it makes everything else seem a tiny bit more plausible.
Yeah.
It's like, huh. One thing I wanted to touch on with, of course, the closing shop, and because you did a talk on this, now it's about 6 or 8 months ago, I think, locally, about the book being banned by the
Westboro Baptist Church.
I can't say that. You can say it for me.
Well, they didn't ban it because they're only a small
Yeah,
group in America that, but they chose to hate it, and that is like a badge of honor because I've been really upset if they'd have liked it, but they were sort of condemning it and saying it was blasphemous and things like that. But they're just a group that hate everybody, and I'm not quite sure of the version of the Bible that they've read, but they seem to see the word hate in every other chapter. So they will picket American servicemen's funerals and sports events, and they once posted a long rant about how Billy Joel's music was Satan's music, and I wish I'd have saved it because it's not online anymore, but it was hilarious. And so I'm thinking, Uptown Girl, I'm thinking, I'm not quite sure how that's so evil, but they really hate Billy Joel.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm in there with good company.
So it's quite amazing that you even got on the radar, isn't it?
Well, it was actually a joke that sort of worked strangely well, because I have a friend in Mississippi, and she emailed them as a joke to be really upset by this book, and they just bit, and they thought, right, we'll reel them in, and it was sort of they just took it all and thought, were really offended by my book. I mean, I'm not even sure they read it. They may have just seen the review on Amazon or something like that, and just decided to hate it because it wasn't praising them.
Yeah, you just poke the snake's nest there, and they struck.
Yeah, I'm tempted to actually send them the sequel so that they can have a rant about that as well.
Have you used any of this for greater publicity then?
Well, I do mention it in the talk, and it's always good to drop in there that the Westboro Baptist Church don't like me, and
yeah, exactly.
I'm on their hate list. But it's one of those things, and I'm tempted to do one of the books in the series called God versus the Westboro Baptist Church.
I could just see on the cover a little, the testimonial where you give one of the quotes that they really don't like. It might encourage everyone else to buy it.
Yes.
So you mentioned you've already published the second book now, The Sword of Uncreation.
Yes, and they are books set around heaven and hell and demons and angels, but it isn't strictly speaking a sequel, so you could read any of the novels in any order and they'd still make sense. But it's basically where it starts off with the Battle of the Apocalypse, and God has this magical sword created so that instead of demons and angels getting killed on earth and their souls going back to heaven or hell, if they're cut with this sword, they just cease to exist. And it becomes such a powerful weapon of mass destruction that it helps God to win the war. But it's so dangerous, if it fell into the wrong hands, he actually hides it on earth and casts a magic spell, so not even he knows where it is. But he has human keepers that look after it from generation to generation. And eventually one of the keepers gets disillusioned and he sells his soul to Satan, but then regrets it and tries to run away and hide so he doesn't have to tell Satan where the sword is. And one of the demons kills him, but instead of going to heaven or hell, he ends up in limbo, and both angels and demons have to go and find him and hopefully get him to tell them where the sword is.
If I remember correctly, you did drop a hint in the first book on that, didn't you?
Oh yes, I mean, it's sort of, as I said before, I sort of went back. I'd written so many in the series. I went back and put in little Easter eggs in the first book about what happens in the subsequent one, so that people can go back and, hey, I remember that. Oh, that connects to that. But I've got the likes of the angel spirits of Miles Davis and Jimi Hendrix joining forces with the lead angel, who's called Deedon, who has a striking resemblance to me. And they have exploits in London, Florence, and then they end up going to Ilkley Moor. And part of the demon army is called The Demon Cows, which you could probably just see them over my shoulder. And they are quite possibly the most useless demons ever, because all they ever say is moo, but everybody seems to understand what they're saying, and their horns are not the greatest weapon for fighting.
So do the most of the cast of the first book are back then in the second one?
Some, well, Deedon is the main character, and he sort of, I've written him out of one of the later books, but he's a recurring character. And Roxy appears for a small bit in the first book, and she has a more developed character in the second. But some characters come in for one book, disappear, and they might reappear in another one later on. And some of the demons do the same as well. But I sort of try and mix up the characters so that they can appear and then disappear. But Roxy actually is a running character as well, so eventually she supersedes Deedon as God's top demon hunter.
And so you mentioned you have up to 6. They're already written, all 6 of them?
I've finished the 9th one now. I've finished the 9th one series. Yeah, so the last one I've just finished was partially based in the Philippines and China. So I try, and each book has sort of different places. So the next one in the series is called Dead Gods, and hopefully that'll be out later this year or early next. And that's set in Colombia, Bolivia, Egypt, so it's South Africa. It's all over the world. It's and a lot of the characters are actually based on people that I know as well. But they all know they're in there, and they're actually flattered that they're. And a lot of them actually say, "Do you want to be an angel and a demon?" And a lot of them just say, "I want to be a demon. The more fun."
So have you managed to travel to any of the places and maybe put it on your tax forms or something as business expenses?
I wish. No, some of them. I mean, the reason I chose Florence in the second book was because I went there on holiday, and there was in the back streets, but you'd walk past it and you'd not take any notice of it because there were no big shops or no monuments or anything there. And there was a Piazza del Limbo, and I saw it and I thought, oh, I can make a story out of that. So I made it so that the gate into purgatory, into limbo, was via that square. And I've sort of took the exploits of my walking trips around Florence into the story. And in another book, it's partially set in Rome, so I love Rome, and Venice, I love Venice, but other places I've never been to. So when I wrote part of a story set in Tel Aviv, I spoke to a friend, and she described some of the hot spots and some of the key parts to visit. And when I was sort of set part of it in a restaurant in Egypt, I got in touch with them, asked their permission to use it, and they said, "Yeah, here's the pictures, and here's the design, the layout, and if you're ever in Egypt, you get a free meal." It's a method in my madness sometimes. And so it's so I do a lot of research if I haven't visited them. So I try and get, even if it's small details about, if you on this particular street there's a strange looking lamppost, or is a shop window and is looking in such and such a shop. I try and put in little snippets like that, so that if you're reading it and you've actually been there, you think, "Oh, I recognise that." And it's like when I was sort of writing about the university in Colorado, I was sort of doing lots of Google images so that people can say, "Oh yeah, right, okay, that's real."
My wife will definitely love your interest in Italy for sure. She's Italian, so.
Oh, right. Okay. Should be good.
But yeah, so you did mention earlier the People's Book Prize.
Yeah.
Because it's not a really big award, is it? But I know you put quite a bit of time and effort into sort of being part of this prize.
Well, I enjoy it. I mean, plus there's a lot of kudos for any author to say award-winning or prize-winning author, and it's not like the like the Man Booker Prize or something like that. It's small, but it was set up so that it encourages reading in young people. So it's actually got a good purpose, and also it's actually voted for by the people instead of some board of intellectuals who love arty-farty books that are full of themselves, that normal people sort of would rather keep it on the coffee table than read. So it's not like your book and my book, books where it's sort of people who can really get into it, enjoy it. It's the sort of stuff that you get a Keira Knightley into, a film involving in it. But it's I'd much rather have a comedy novel with the people that have read it voting for it than some team of experts.
Right. Has it got very widespread? Like, is it very well known at the moment, or is that is it still growing? Or
well, I think it's in its 11th year now. But it's David Walliams has won it, and so it is sort of well known, and so it's one of those things where there's so many book awards out there that people may not know all of them, but it's fairly well known.
Because the first time I basically discovered it was through you, essentially.
It's not one of those things where self-published people can do it. Books have got to be submitted through recognised publishers, and it's got to be approved by their assessing panel. So it's just, I mean, to me, it's fantastic to win it. Fingers crossed, you never know. But to actually get selected is an honour as well, and to make it through to the finals it's mind blowing in a sense.
So did you? So how far have you got then? Did you say the first one made it to the finals?
Made it to the finals, and I got through to the finals. Went to the awards ceremony in the Stationers Guild Hall in London, which is just around the corner from St Paul's Cathedral and Eamon Corner, which made me laugh when I saw that street name. And if the award ceremony goes through, it could be October or September of this year. It's going to be in the same place. So it's a black tie event and all this nouvelle cuisine food that I must admit I went with my son last year, and I came out and we were both feeling hungry after the meal, so we went round to the local Wetherspoons and had a meal there as well.
So when does the voting end for this year then?
It finished at the end of May, so it just finished at the weekend. On Monday, I'm losing track of the days, and so it's just a case of them deciding when they're going to have the award ceremony, or if it's going to be some online affair.
So and it has been pushed back.
The award ceremony should have been on the 24th of April this year.
Oh, very cool.
Because thanks to COVID, it just got put back, and because it being put back, they thought, well, we'll extend the voting period as well, a bit more publicity opportunities for the authors.
And you're still in the running this time as well?
Yeah, through to the final. So if there is an award, I'll have to dig up my my dinner jacket and my dicky bow and head down to London again.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a good following then, if you keep getting enough votes for these in.
Yes, a lot of people enjoy my books, so that's always good. I mean, that makes me happy. I want, obviously, every author wants to sell thousands and thousands of books, but I want them to enjoy what they're reading as well.
Well, I mean, you clearly enjoy writing them. You're up to 9.
Well, I've written 9 in the series. I've also written a standalone comedy set in a fictional South American country, so it's a bit like an updated version of an Ealing comedy. And I've written a young adult novel set in the medieval times as well. So it's just a case of getting them all ready for publishing and getting them out there. So
this is maybe too personal for most authors, but do you make a living off your writing, or does it provide you some income? Does it break even in its efforts at all?
Let's just say it's more of a hobby. Yeah. It's a bit like playing golf. You can enjoy it, and you may have a talent for it, but you're not going to become Tiger Woods and become a millionaire. You do it because you enjoy it, and you pay the fees to play a round of golf, and you have to pay for the clubs and the balls and things like that. And you're never going to make a massive profit out of it. I mean, I do get a few royalties out of it, but it's not having me giving up work just yet. But like every author, we all dream that we're going to become the next J.K. Rowling or Dan Brown or whoever, and sell the millions that they do.
Or maybe get a movie deal or something.
Yes.
Yours does sound like the kind of book that might inspire a movie, some kind of movie or TV series.
Well, as it happens, I've discovered a friend on Facebook, and he just contacted me out of the blue, and he manages. I can't say the name because there's a non-disclosure agreement on it, but he's asked me to become the ghostwriter for their autobiography, and they're sort of a world champion athletes. They've won the world champion of their sport 7 times, and they're wanting to go into politics. And I'm in the process of writing their autobiography, even though I'm writing it. And he's got connections in Hollywood, and his aspiration is it's a sort of rags to riches underdog story, and his aspiration is to sell it to Hollywood. So he's actually sent me this template of how to do a movie pitch. So I'm actually thinking of doing that for my novels and trying to flog it to Hollywood.
Yeah, sounds promising.
I mean, I've sat by the phone waiting for Steven Spielberg to ring me, and he's so far lost my number.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. One thing I have heard when you pitch your stuff to Hollywood, though, is, or any other movie or TV studios, you definitely have to have the copyright nailed down.
Oh, it's something that everybody says, if you're going to deal with Hollywood, make sure you get the lawyers involved. And that's what I do.
Probably do that. So yeah, you mentioned, I was going to touch on that. So what's it like ghostwriting then? I do know a couple ghostwriters. I haven't really spoken to them about it, but what's your experience there?
Well, it's a strange thing, because you've got to get as much detail from the subject as possible. But sometimes they'll tell you something and say, "Oh, just between you and me," because you're thinking, they'll tell you a risky story about Boris Johnson or something like that. But you can't just say it just between you and me. It's a nice bit of story, it'd be great in there. Let me use it.
Yeah.
Then when you're actually writing it out, you've got to sort of write it in the first person, but it's about somebody else. So it's trying to make their story into a gripping tale, right? Because I've got a pile of autobiographies by my side right here, and you read them, and to be honest, you can tell they're written by somebody else, because when you actually meet them in person, you're thinking you're not that articulate, but a lot of them are really dull as well. So unless you're really into football, you can think, oh, that dull as dishwater. Whereas I'm trying to make it like you don't have to be into that particular sport or even know that person really well. You can actually learn their life story, and to be honest, they've had an interesting story about their childhood being beaten up and racism and all kinds of things that have happened to them. So I think it would be a fantastic story once it's completed, and I'm sure people would enjoy reading it.
So it's like teasing out the really interesting bits of the life and weaving them into a narrative, basically.
Oh yes, but the problem is that when you're talking, sometimes they'll give you bits of information that you're trying to focus on their childhood, and they'll say, "Oh well, yeah, well when I did this and that, and I met such and such, and we're just in fashion with them." And no, leave that till the next bit, and but you sort of make little notes for later on, and so you try and keep them focused and say, right, your childhood home in East London, Walthamstow, or wherever it was. Tell me about this, and what were the bedrooms like? What's it like living with sort of 7 brothers and sisters and in a 3-bedroom flat and things like that? So it's an interesting learning curve for me, and I'm actually enjoying it.
So do you try and write in their voice as well, sort of as much as possible? I mean, so that so that the reader hears them, or is it just the main focus is an interesting story of them?
I think it'd be rather patronising if I tried to write in the voice of the subject, because just a little snippet, their family is sort of the Windrush generation. So if I tried to put on a black tone and West Indies kind of thing, it'd come across false. But I, I'm trying to write it as if they are the writer, and it sort of follows. But it's not. I'm not trying to make it look like I'm some appropriating their systems.
Yeah, you definitely have to be careful. And then some things are just beyond the author's experience to actually convey, aren't they? I mean, I completely agree. I had a pseudo Jamaican character in one of my stories, and I'm like, man, there's no way I can actually properly express that. So I ended up making the character someone who was pretending to be that culture, but wasn't actually that culture.
As I'm writing it, is in the first person as if it is them. I'm trying to be as authentic as possible, but without faking it.
Right, true to the intent.
But I'm trying to do justice to them and capture their story because they've lived an amazing life.
You also mentioned you started writing comedy sketches for an online comedy show recently.
Yeah, it's an American. I started writing comedy sketches for a show that was going to be videoed, but unfortunately, the budget that they got from the producers, there were certain accidents in the studios, and the money just disappeared, so that never happened. But I was also writing for just an audio comedy sketch show called what's it? If I get it wrong, they'll clobber me. But it's Yesterday Night Tapes, and it's a lot of it sort of they're trying to be the next Saturday Night Live comedy show, but they do a lot of American sketch shows, and they brought me in and as a sort of kind of English slant to it. So I write a lot of very Monty Python type humour, and they love it. And I've even doing a few voices for that as characters as well. So I tend to play either upper class twits or bumbling Hugh Grant type people, or just the butt of the American jokes.
So I think we're coming near the end of the time now, but I wanted to, we can discuss a lot of things for a long time.
Talk all afternoon.
Yeah.
I've run out of coffee.
Okay. I wanted to give you a chance, sort of what's coming out of yours soonest, and where can people find you online, and where can they watch you for the People's Book Prize?
I'm occasionally I can be occasionally found on Facebook under Darren Walker author. I'm also under Twitter under the same name, and I have the website under the same name. I'm imaginative like that. But there's also the website for the People's Book Prize. If you just Google search that People's Book Prize, you'll find links to those events. And as and when the award ceremony happens, I will be telling people all about it. And so that's how, if you want to link up, say hello, I'd love to. And if you want to chat about books, I'm always happy to do that as well. And
your Facebook feed does have a lot of humorous.
You make sure you get the right sense of humour. But it will give you an idea of the kind of humour in my books.
Oh, yeah. And when is your next book coming out?
I haven't got a date yet. It's still in the editing process, and I've had a few back and forwards, but I've managed to find a really good editor, proofreader now. So it's just for me to put it all together so that I can submit it to my publisher, and fingers crossed. So end of this year, early next year, it'll be out and ready. It'll be called Dead Gods.
What's it called, sorry?
Dead Gods.
Dead Gods. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And best of luck in the People's Book Prize.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch probably again.
Once the comedy sketches are recorded as well, I'll be telling people about them as well, so you can listen to my dulcet tones being mocked by Americans.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. All right, thanks again.
Thanks a lot. Take care.